In 2007, my sister and I opened Tip Top Kitchen and Cocktails downtown. And as a small business owner, I can tell you the last 4 years have been kind of rough. They were especially rough in 2012 when in 1 month, with virtually no notice whatsoever, AEP hiked their prices up 25%. 25% price increase in 1 month, no warning, was brutal. It killed me. I got on the phone and talked to every small business owner I knew, and we were all asking ourselves, what are we going to do? How are we going to absorb this cost? What are our alternatives? I wound up having to take out a high-interest capital loan, not to pay for things I wanted to pay for, like improvements to my restaurant, but just so I could stay afloat, so I could keep up with sales tax and pay my staff. To add insult to injury, in February of 2012, the Dispatch released an article in which the governor responded to the price hike, in which he essentially said, it's not my problem. It's not the governor's office to care about rising utility prices. And that's why it was incredulous to me and unbelievable to me that John Kasich signed SB 310 into law. Not only is it going to kill any potential new jobs in alternative energy, but it is going to raise utility prices even further. As a small business owner, that is brutal. That cuts into any money that I could possibly save or improve my restaurant. And not only me, but it's bad for all Ohioans. It cuts into whatever little disposable income we have that we could be using to contribute to a driving, healthy economy. As an Ohioan, as a small business owner, we need a governor who understands and cares about the impact and the difference that these rising utility prices have on Ohioans. And that's why I'm very proud to introduce to you the next governor of Ohio, Ed FitzGerald. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks. Tim, thank you very much. And thanks for sharing your story with us. What Tim said is exactly right. Being progressive about energy efficiency and advanced energy and the new energy economy isn't just the right thing to do environmentally, it's also good for business. It's good for small businesses, it's good for the manufacturing business. What was so discouraging, as Tim mentioned, about Senate Bill 310 is that this state was really making progress when it came to this policy area. We really were. We helped lead the nation in terms of what was passed under the previous administration in terms of the renewable energy standards, and it was working. It was one of those times, which doesn't happen often enough probably, where government diagnosed a problem, they had a strategy to deal with it, and it was working. Why do I say it was working? Because it was encouraging energy savings and efficiency. It was actually driving investment into the state. You had these enormous wind farms that were being established in the western part of the state, out in Van Wert County and surrounding areas there. So you had millions of dollars coming in from out of the state. The estimate is that there are 25,000 jobs that were linked to that part of the new energy economy. And so we were helping to lead the country, and now we are leading the country in a completely opposite direction. Senate Bill 310 was an enormous step backwards, and it's going to have, I think, if it's not reversed, it's going to have dire consequences for this state. It's one of the reasons that there was such a broad-based coalition against it. Everything from the Ohio Manufacturers Association, the Catholic Bishops of Ohio, many, again, small business owners, even a lot of public utilities didn't say anything publicly, with the exception of First Energy, I believe. What is it going to result in? Well, higher utility prices, which Tim just talked about, what a burden that could be on small businesses. Fewer jobs, not just the 25,000 jobs that are currently linked to it, but what about all the thousands of jobs that were on the drawing board that now definitely have a question mark about them? It's certainly not good for our environment. We're towards the bottom in the country in terms of environmental health, particularly with things like the amount of nitrogen oxide that's in the air and sulfur dioxide and so forth, and we were making progress in that area, and that Senate Bill 310 holds that into question. It's not just Senate Bill 310, it was also the House Bill 483 as well, having to do with the wind turbine project. So it isn't enough to just say, well, that was wrong, what are we going to do to make it right? Because basically you had the equivalent of Governor Kasich putting an enormous "you are not welcome" sign on Ohio when it comes to the new energy economy. and it's going to have immediate consequences. There have already been some folks in that industry that have said, basically now we're going to look elsewhere. We've got to reverse that as quickly as possible. So let me just mention 6 principles that we're going to try to follow that I think will take us in the right direction instead of this path that we've headed down. Number 1 is we have to reassure that industry immediately. So if I'm elected on election day, immediately, even before I take office in January officially, we need to reach out to those sectors of the economy that have been discouraged and say, wait, we had an administration that was hostile to you. An administration is coming in that's friendly. Let's talk about how can we work with you? How can we create a friendly environment? That needs to start immediately because these decisions about investment are happening now. And I don't even want to wait until we get sworn in January. So we've got to sit down with them as quickly as possible during that transition period to say that we want you here, we want your investment, and we want to have your buy-in. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I think that there are ways that the state can encourage additional research into advanced energy. We don't just want to be a place where energy is extracted. We don't just want to be a place where the manufacturing process that takes place. We want the entire energy industry to be represented here, and that includes things like academic research and private research, nonprofit research, and that can be stimulated and encouraged by the state. One of the things that Texas did right was not just that they had drilling going on there, but they also built an energy industry around drilling, and that includes research around their academic institutions. And that can be part of what we do, and we should encourage that through our academic institutions. Third, we need to repeal House Bill 483. House Bill 483 was the setback provision saying that no wind turbine can be built within 1,250 feet to the nearest property line. Let's talk about what the practical effects of that. The Blue Creek Wind Farm, which exists in Van Wert and Paulding County, has approximately 150 turbines. The estimate is that only about 20 of those turbines could have been built in their current location if that law had been in place at the time. So this is something that, again, in addition to 310, it's really been a double whammy. We're really sending a very strong and powerful message to the wind industry in particular that we don't want them here. That needs to be reversed, and we should introduce legislation that would do so. Fourth principle is we do need to work with our traditional methods of energy, so that includes coal and oil and natural gas. That is part of the solution here. And so we should have an all-of-the-above approach. We should certainly encourage, in my opinion, oil and gas exploration and drilling, but that can be done in an environmentally responsible way. I've been very troubled, as have many Ohioans, about the way that it appears that state agencies that are supposed to be solely really operating on behalf of the public and what's best for the public appear to have been hijacked by private interests. We have seen that at the Ohio EPA with the case of Mr. El Maraghi, which is very troubling to me, where it appears that industry is trying to choose who their regulators are. It also happened again with the situation with ODNR, where Governor Kasich's administration has not managed really to get their story straight, and where ODNR is actually participating in talking about how they would make it possible to have drilling in state parks, which I think is totally inappropriate, which was authorized by a state law that Governor Kasich signed into law, though he later said he disagreed with what he signed into law. What you have in both of these cases is you have the balance that should exist, where a state agency should be operating solely in the public's interest. You have the prospect, I think, and examples of these agencies being hijacked. And if we're going to have increased oil and gas exploration, which I believe we will, I believe is appropriate, you have to have an absolute assurance that those entities are going to be run strictly for the benefit of the public, not for the benefit of the industries that they're supposed to regulate. Number 5, we need to target some of our economic development in the energy field into those coal-producing areas which may be affected by regulations that are coming down. So as older forms of energy start to decrease and newer forms of energy hopefully increase in this state, we have to make sure that that's done in a balanced way so that regions of the state are not left without resources. Federal government has done this before, by the way, as they have, let's say, de-emphasized tobacco production. They have tried to incentivize other types of agricultural production. We should be doing the same thing when it comes to energy so that no part of the state is left behind. And sixth and finally, one of the things that I'm proud of in my career, way back when I was mayor of Lakewood, we created the state's first energy efficiency improvement district. We called it an advanced energy district. It's basically a way to allow either individuals or companies to pool their resources and have basically a bonding mechanism so that when they are trying to implement some type of advanced energy system, whether it's solar or wind or geothermal, they have a financing mechanism to do that. They're basically pooling their buying power and getting savings as a result of that. We just had a project, a major hotel project in Cleveland that saved approximately $400,000 just because of the fact that years ago we had set up this advanced energy district, which businesses are allowed now to take advantage of. That was authorized by a state law a number of years ago. It should be expanded. The state has never taken a leadership role in trying to put these basically co-ops together, and we could do that. It's not forced on anyone, it's voluntary, but what it allows businesses or individuals to do is it brings down the cost of actually implementing something like a geothermal system, let's say, and it brings down the financing costs to make it more affordable to actually construct the system in the first place, and then the payback period and the rate of return is accelerated once the savings actually come in. And we became the first, actually I was mayor of Lakewood at the time, but we joined with other suburbs to create this district, and now it's actually moved beyond just the borders of my home city of Lakewood. That model can be replicated all over the state. And it's a way for, basically a no-cost way for the state to make it easier for businesses and individuals to avail themselves of this new technology as it's developed. Now, what would all of these things do together? All these things, all six principles together, send a completely opposite message than what we've seen in Ohio in the last few weeks. In the last few weeks in Ohio, you've had this enormous message that has been resonating not just all over the state, but all over the country, saying Ohio is not the place to go if you want to make a major investment into the new energy economy. What these six principles would do is send the opposite message. It would say we're serious about it, we made a mistake, but we're also building on the progress that we've already made. And who's going to benefit? The state is going to benefit in general because you're going to have those companies that now are not sure whether they want to invest here. They're going to have a sense of confidence that this is what this state is all about. Consumers are going to benefit because energy efficiency is going to be front and center again. And businesses are going to benefit because they're going to have opportunities to avail themselves of those opportunities. Folks in the drilling and coal producing areas of the state are going to benefit because they are going to get a lot of the benefits as that industry continues to grow. So this is a common sense, all of the above strategic plan. And I think it's what Ohio needs. I think it's what most people in Ohio, I think the overwhelming majority of people in Ohio want something like this. If the election goes the right way, they're going to get something like this. So I appreciate you coming out, and if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer.
Do you agree with the Obama administration's recently announced coal carbon restrictions?
So my problem with what those restrictions as they've been rolled out is that if you're going to take actions, regulatory actions, that are going to have a significant economic effect, you can't leave the populations that are economically dependent on current industry hanging. That's why we have as one of the principles of this plan that we need to target our new energy economy efforts into those areas. So as one area, let's say, is affected, it's actually getting the benefit. If you're in coal country and your bottom line is affected, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of benefit if Van Wert County is doing well. So we need to figure out a way to try to balance out the positives and the minuses when it comes to regulatory schemes. Yes, sir.
Is your proposal to, when it comes to 310, to just repeal that law and go back to the standards that were in place prior to that? Or would you like to use this new study committee that they've created to implement all of these other things that you've been proposing?
I think the study committee was a cover for trashing the renewable energy standards. Look, I'll work with whatever cards we've been dealt, or whatever forum is appropriate. My proposal is to go back to the previous pre-Senate Bill 310 structure. Now, if that doesn't happen and it's not repealed, I think there has actually been some talk about whether or not that would actually be on the ballot at some point. But if it's not repealed either by the legislature or by the voters themselves, then I'll work with whatever framework is there. And we'll be, I hope we can get it all done in a year, but if it's a part of a long-term plan, that's what we'll do.
Ed, a week ago Tuesday, I was in Denver to cover the Clinton Global Initiative, and I had a chance to actually talk with President Clinton. He made a nice comment about you. He said, "I like Ed FitzGerald." And then he said, "People are dying for someone who can make things work." And he encouraged you to hammer that notion home. How will you make things work where John Kasich maybe hasn't made things work?
Let's talk about even what we're talking about today. So when I was mayor of Lakewood, we created an advanced energy district, first in the state, and we said, let's make this work, not just for our city, but for the whole community. And it's working. People are saving hundreds of thousands of dollars by implementing energy efficiency in my county because we took that action and actually built a coalition with other communities to band together to do that. So it helps the environment, it created jobs, and it saved businesses money. That's the kind of thing that where we can say, look, we've actually made these things happen. And I have that kind of a record as a county official and as a mayor, and I think people are going to respond to it once they hear the other side of the story. You can tell Bill I said hello if you see him again.
Is nuclear on your list of all of the above?
No. I think that nuclear power has tremendous startup costs. We already have nuclear power in the state, and so it's part of our portfolio right now. But I don't think it's practical to say that the future for Ohio right now is going to be additional nuclear plants. Now we already have part of our energy portfolio includes nuclear, and that's fine. But I don't see part of the solution being additional nuclear plants.
So you would not amend the law to take nuclear out of the...
I'm sorry?
You would not amend the law to take nuclear out of the menu of options for renewables and advanced energy?
No.
There are a lot of folks that say the President has a war on coal. There are a lot of folks that are saying, the frackers are really the folks that are attacking coal because natural gas is plentiful, it's abundant, it's cheap. AEP is switching from coal to burning natural gas. Is Obama really the problem, or is it other industry sectors?
There's market forces that are at work there, and the market is going to go in part to where the cheapest energy is. And when gas prices are low, there's going to be market activity that gravitates towards natural gas, and that's just going to happen. I don't think that's necessarily part of a war on coal, as opposed to that's an economic reality. But what we want to make sure is that as one part of the energy economy grows, it doesn't mean that entire communities are completely left out in the cold. And I think there's ways to do that. I think a lot of the rhetoric around the war on coal has been extremely simplistic. But I do think that it's incumbent upon the Obama administration or any federal administration to say that there are economic effects of regulation, and you need to take those into account. So for the mine workers that have been doing that for a generation, if it affects them economically, then we have to make sure that we have programs and investment policies that take that into account, make sure that they have economic alternatives.
Any last questions from this side of the room?
When it comes to the research funding that you're talking about, that's supposed to be one of the things that Third Frontier does. Is this a problem with what Third Frontier's priorities have been?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yes, because what you had happen, and this was reported at the time, but and I'm glad you brought it up because it hasn't been commented on much recently, is that something changed after Governor Kasich got elected, even with the process of the grants that were given out by Third Frontier. So you had a situation where Third Frontier was denying a wind power project in particular. The board rejected a proposal that would have had a research component to it, and they actually overruled their staff. So the staff at Third Frontier said this investment makes sense, we should do it, it's part of our mission, and the board overruled them and said no, it doesn't make sense. So I think there's been an anti-advanced energy philosophy that's been reflected in this administration. It goes back to very early comments by Governor Kasich saying that wind power was dumb. I think that's a quote. And when you set that kind of tone early on, you see your own appointees start to reflect that, and I think we've seen that with Third Frontier. And I think it'll make a big difference to have a governor that says that this is actually a wise investment, and we want all of the various components of state government, including Third Frontier, to reflect those priorities.
And there are some proposals out there now for a bond issue that are before the Attorney General. Are you ready to endorse any of those, or is that something that we should be looking at, a separate bond issue just for that?
Yeah, I haven't taken a position on that yet.
Okay, thank you.